Breaking news out of Charlottesville. Tony Bennett has retired from Virginia effective immediately. This is the fastest thing that's happened for Virginia basketball in quite some time.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. It's the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me for this live edition, emergency edition of the show, where you get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Reminder, you can get every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to the everydayers and all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord jumping in and joining us here on a Thursday evening around supper time. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's get into this crazy, unexpected news. It is just me. Andy is off at WCC Media Days today. So we're going to talk together more in depth about this on Monday's show. Tomorrow's show for Friday is going to be a bunch of interviews and things that he did as part of those media days on Thursday today. And then we'll be back with more on the Tony Bennett news and information on Monday's show. So let me just give you some ins and outs, what we know right now. We'll talk about what this means, the landscape, all of that coming up. So Tony Bennett retires at the age of 55, announced on Thursday afternoon. Jeff Goodman initially broke it, but then Virginia confirmed it and announced that there would be a press conference tomorrow morning, Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, to make the official announcement, at which point I'm sure we will get a lot more information about what's to come. But I'm going to give you my best estimates and expectations about what that is. Let me just run you quickly through some of the accolades for Tony Bennett. 3 years at Washington State, where he coached, amongst others, Klay Thompson. 15 years at Virginia. This would have been year 16. In that time span, 12 NCAA tournaments, 4 Sweet 16s, 2 Elite Eights, a Final Four, and of course that 2019 national championship. In that span in the ACC, 6 regular season championships, 2 ACC tournament champions, multiple National Coach of the Year awards, multiple Conference Coach of the Year awards. He holds the single season wins record at both schools. Tony Bennett, wildly accomplished head coach, out the door at the age of 55. And I mean, something I think important to say here is that, yes, Tony Bennett, for everything he is in terms of accomplishments as a head coach, he is by all accounts an even better human being and person. And so that is another part of what makes this difficult for our sport, just losing a great person. So there is that. And this comes on the heels. I mean, literally ACC tip-off was this time last week. This is a week later. After that, you go through ACC Media Days, and now Tony Bennett is retiring. As of today, Thursday, it is just 20 days until Virginia's first game. They tip off Wednesday, November 6th of the first week of games. So they don't play on that initial Monday like so many do, but they will play 20 days from today. I've been racking my brain trying to think of other examples of a coach doing this close to the season, this caliber coach, like a national championship level coach. And the best thing I can think of similar is legendary coach Dean Smith from North Carolina, who retired on October 9th. So about, 8 days prior to where we are at today, back in 1997, and did that, and then named Bill Guthridge, his longtime assistant, as his next coach. North Carolina's first game that season was November 14th. That was against Middle Tennessee State. So there was a bigger gap, like a month and 5 days. Whereas again, here we're just talking about 20 days. So this is an even tighter window and time frame. And man, it's just an absolute bombshell for our sport as we sit here again on October 17th. Unreal stuff. Why would Tony Bennett do this? There's a lot of very frustrated Virginia fans. There are a lot of very confused college basketball fans. From everything we're hearing, there's nothing health related associated with it. The most likely guess at the point, before I'm sure we're going to find all this out with certitude on Friday, tomorrow, when we get the press conference, is that Tony Bennett is just done. Now, it's different because we've seen other coaches who are older, more experienced, stepping out in recent years. But Tony Bennett at 55 is the most shocking of those, because it's like, I think prior to this, it was probably Jay Wright that felt like, oh, you had the most time left. But with Coach Bennett doing this in his mid 50s, where most coaches are just coming into their prime, is very shocking and interesting. So my best estimation, my best guess is that it has so much to do with the changing landscape of college athletics, with the transfer portal, with NIL, with, let's be honest, pay for play. It is what it is. So much of what he's been able to do at Virginia has been based on building a program and a system and continuity where players come into that program, often redshirt as freshmen, and then they grow into the Virginia way, learning through defensive principles, learning how to play methodically and be dudes, right? That is where we saw, that 19 championship team come to fruition with a Kyle Guy and a Ty Jerome, et cetera. That is not the landscape of college athletics, but that is clearly the program that Tony Bennett wants to build. And so it would seem to make a lot of sense that is him heading out the door in that way, that he's just flat out done. This is probably a family move. This is probably I've made plenty of money between coaching and being an NBA player. I don't need this anymore. This is not what I signed on for or signed up for. And, by the way, this is all in real time. More news might come out Thursday later in the evening. So I should timestamp this. We are at right now 7:07 p.m. Eastern time. And I'm even going to read in between the lines. I went back and were there any clues at ACC tip-off last week? I went back and I was able to find an interview he did with Jeff Borzello. And part of that interview, he said this, quote, "You can sit here and complain and gripe, insert, about the current state of college athletics, or you have a decision to make." He went on to say, either you try to do it your way, which we just talked about, the Tony Bennett Virginia way, or you make that decision, end quote. I mean, that to me, y'all, is telling. And here we are a week later, seems like he decided to make that decision since he could no longer do it his way. So that's where we're at. That's where it stands. And what I want to look ahead to is, so what's next? And what does this mean for the landscape of college basketball and where things are at? That's what I want to get to next. And we'll do that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. How about some national championship odds? Duke leads the way right now at plus 950. Followed by Houston and Kansas at plus 1,000, UConn at plus 1,100, and then Alabama, number 2 preseason at plus 1,400. If you want to get in on that action or anything else, you can go check out Virginia's odds to win the ACC. Probably just took a massive hit. I doubt they've adjusted it yet, and so that's really interesting. But you can get in on all of this on America's #1 sportsbook. It's FanDuel.com. All right, gang, want to just look ahead to what this means. I mean, and one thing I didn't mention yet, we talked about all the good of Tony Bennett. One thing we got to recognize, this is the first coach in NCAA tournament history to be a 1 seed that lost to a 16 seed in UMBC. They come back. The next year, he's also the first coach to do that and then win a national championship the next year. Matt Painter tried to join him, fell just 1 game shy of doing so. Remember, Purdue lost in the first round, came back and almost did it last year, but lost in the national championship game. So there is that side of it. So here's where we're looking at. Now we are at the point where there are only 6 remaining active head coaches in college basketball, in the entire landscape of college basketball, who have won a national championship. And I know, like in college football, it's only 3. Kirby Smart, Mac Brown, and Dabo, right? That's it. So that's fewer because the power stuff in college football is even more consolidated than basketball. But man, this is tough for our sport. That's where we're at, is dealing with this landscape of college athletics right now. And this is my biggest take from this, is ruining our ability to hang on to our biggest and best names and coaches, because they're saying, I'm done and I'm out and I don't need this. So now, by my count, we only have 6 active national champion head coaches left. That's Bill Self at Kansas, Tom Izzo at Michigan State, John Calipari, no longer at Kentucky, at Arkansas, Danny Hurley, back-to-back national champion at UConn, Rick Pitino, who's now at St. John's, and then Scott Drew, who is at Baylor. Almost went to Kentucky, but stayed at Baylor. That's it. That's the only national champion head coaches we have left. Why? Because we've just lost Tony Bennett. We've just lost Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski and Jim Boeheim and who am I leaving out that Jay Wright that I talked about earlier. Like, all those guys are all out the door. In fact, that has all happened. Let's look specifically just at the ACC. With Tony Bennett leaving, that means the ACC has lost a national champion head coach each of the last 4 seasons. That's the landscape right now. 21-22, Hubert Davis was in for Roy Williams at North Carolina. 22-23, John Shire was in for Coach K at Duke. Last year, 23-24, Red Autry was in for Jim Boeheim at Syracuse. And then this year, we don't know yet. We're waiting on this. I'm going to give you my prediction here in just a second, but Tony Bennett is out. So this is just the ACC. For the most prominent coaches in our entire sport, gone, out the door. So where does Virginia turn? Because school's in session, right? We're like halfway through the fall semester. Nobody's leaving Virginia right now because they're stuck, you know? So I think what you do, you cannot right now go off and do a national coaching search because no one's leaving their school right now. What you do, in my opinion, is you insert an interim head coach, and then you start your national head coach as the season wears on, hopefully landing somebody by the time the spring rolls around, or one of your interims is that guy and you feel good about what they did, similar to Rodney Terry at Texas after Chris Beard was given the boot, or similar to Jake Diebler at Ohio State, who, went 8-3 down the stretch for the Buckeyes last year and is now their head coach. Maybe that happens. So who's that going to be? The most obvious choices, in my opinion, are we now have like 5 assistant head coaches you can have, but Virginia has 2 associate head coaches. That's Ron Sanchez and Jason Williford. They are both assistant coaches, associate head coaches that have been with Virginia for a decade or more. Ron Sanchez is actually in his second stint at Virginia. He was there 9 years and then came back last year for year 10, and this is now year 11. Jason Williford, this is his 16th straight season as an assistant in the Virginia program, came over with Tony Bennett and has been there ever since. The reason Ron Sanchez hasn't been there as long is because he was the head coach at Charlotte for 2018 to 2023. So I would lean, because of his head coaching experience for prior to last year, the several seasons before that, I would lean with this at least interim tag, unless Tony Bennett and they already had a plan and Sanchez, you just name him the guy. What I would do from the outside looking in is put Ron Sanchez into the interim role, because not only has he had a decade plus at Virginia, he also has that head coaching experience at Charlotte. And to me, in a pinch like this, that's what I would want to lean on and go with. And then obviously the hope is that Jason Williford continues to be the guy and the support that he has been. That's what I would do with this if I'm Virginia. We'll see what actually happens. So that's the news we know right now. Obviously, we will learn a lot more tomorrow, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, as Virginia has already announced a press conference for this. Lots of quotes and comments coming out, like I just saw before we hopped on. The ACC put out a comment. I believe that was from the commissioner. So we're getting lots of stuff like that here. Man. And like, I know this is going to be a massive change. Like you think about, let's put it in football terms. Paul Johnson leaving Georgia Tech, changing from triple option to just a normal football team. Virginia is one of the biggest entities in our sport in terms of like being a unique brand, a unique style of play. We don't get that all over the country. And so who knows what's going to happen next at Virginia, right? Like if it is Coach Sanchez, we would imagine they would keep it the same, but we don't know. We talked about Coach Red Autry coming in for Boeheim. They're not sticking with that famed 2-3 zone that Coach Boeheim ran forever. So what are we looking at Virginia? Will it be the same? Will it be different? We don't know. But an icon of our sport is gone. And that makes it sound like he's dead, is leaving. And man, that is so, so sad to me because Tony Bennett has been such a great ambassador for basketball. And again, by all accounts, a great human being and somebody that, you know, if I had a son going off to play college basketball, somebody I would want my son to play for. And so I'm grateful for the time that we have had with Coach Bennett at the helm of the Cavs and Wazoo before that. And we will certainly miss him dearly. All right. So on Monday, Andy and I will be back with more information. We're going to know a lot more by then. We will be back with you to unpack that, break down what we know. But until then, make sure you are subscribed to Locked On College Basketball on both video and audio, where we are always bringing you stuff. We are just like less than 3 weeks away from the start of the season now. It's going to be incredible. Can't wait to do that. If you're not part of the Locked On College Basketball Discord, we'd love to have you there. The link for that's in the show notes, and it's absolutely free to join. We'd love to have you as part of that community. All right, gang. Andy will be back with you tomorrow, as I said, with information from WCC Media Days, and then we'll be back on Monday with more on the Virginia coaching situation. But until then, apologies to the lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats. Peace.